So we're going to go through this document. We're not going to read everything because I have two more websites to show you, but they give a really great breakdown. This is their white paper. They give a really great breakdown of DAOs. So in recent years, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, or DAOs, entities that use blockchains, digital assets, and related technologies to direct resources, coordinate activities, and make decisions have experienced explosive growth. According to the analytics service Deep DAO, in 2021, the total value of DAO treasury surged 40-fold, from 400 million to $16 billion. I want you guys to stop right there. How many people, and I can't see let me see if I can see it. Let me see if I can go back to it. Let me know in the chat if you've ever heard of a DAO before. How many people have heard of DAOs? And I guess I should say outside of our classroom, because I think we may have talked about it from time to time. But how many people have heard of DAOs? Okay, we have Rascal Ray. He said he's heard of DAOs. Not outside of the class. Exactly, Jennifer. Exactly, Mama August. Not outside of this class. You don't hear this being discussed. Exactly, Maggie with the bag, money bags, Maggie. You don't really hear this being discussed in the Black community at all. And yet they multiplied it by 40-fold from 400 million to $16 billion. And that's in 2021. We're already in 2025, about to be in 2026. And the number of DAO participants increased 130 times from 13,000 to 1.6 million. And how many of those 1.6 million participants, are Black founders, are Black participants? Probably not that many. So this is why we're talking about this tonight. Let me see if I can scroll down. Every time I do that, I'm always marking it up. Let me see if I can stop with the marking, and then maybe, there we go. I can just scroll up. There we go. Okay. So now let's go ahead and start learning about what a DAO is. So decentralized autonomous organizations, again, are entities that leverage blockchains, digital assets, and related technologies to deploy resources, coordinate activities, and make decisions. DAOs attempt to decentralize the operation of firms and other collective entities by making them functional and financial information transparent, and empowering token holding members to propose, vote on, or enact changes. So first thing is decentralized. What is that word decentralized? We've been talking about centralized, decentralized. Well, we know centralized when it comes to the banking system, if we're looking at the financial institution, would be a bank, because they have your money, right? You just can't, if you wanted, $5,000 today, you actually have to wait. You can't go to the bank right now. It's $7.50 where I am. And so you don't have access to your $5,000. You have to wait until 9 o'clock in the morning or 10 when they open up, and hopefully they'll give it to you. Sometimes they're giving people a hard time who are asking for $5,000 or more, right? Because they really don't have a lot of money on cash. But the whole thing with centralized is that another entity has access to, your assets. Okay, so decentralized is something that we want to have access to. That's what we say in a monetary or financial way of thinking. But when it comes to making decisions in a company, most corporate America is centralized decisions, right? They don't call you into the board meeting to ask, if they want to sell the company before they lay off, 13,000, 15,000 people, do they? No, they're making centralized decisions without your input. And you are technically a stakeholder because you work there, So one thing that I love about DAOs, and we'll get into the pros and the cons as well shortly, but DAOs actually is where you are actually a participant. You have a voice. Everyone has a vote. Token holding members, that's the key thing. You have to own the token. But once you own the token, most have one vote per token or something like that. It just depends. You have to read all the governance rules. But once you're a token holding member, you get to propose, vote on, and enact changes. So just to let you know, is actually a part of the Cosmos system. And I was actually a token holding member. And so in order for me to be rewarded, right, I had to make sure that I always participated. And anytime they had a vote, or anytime they had a change, I had to look at it and cast my vote, yes or no. Also, I could contribute, to the board as well. If I say I didn't work for Cosmos, so I never contributed. But, if I did work for them, if I knew something that external that could affect them, I could say, hey, this new Clarity Act is coming out and it affects da 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 da. I think Cosmos should do X, Y, Z. I could propose something like that. And then the community of token holding members can either approve it, or reject it. Also, too, another person could come in and say, well, yeah, I understand that. But from my point of view, it's this, it's another ABC, not XYZ. They can have an opposing view and they can tell you why they voted against my decision. And I actually like that as a token holder member because they had so many of them and we all have busy lives. The first thing you're going to see on your, on that platform, right, or that app, you're going to see, maybe 90% of people said yes and 10% of people said no. I'm not a person who just likes to follow everyone. So I'm always kind of like, why did the 10% say no? So I always went to go read those opposing views. But in most cases, I went with yes because it just made more sense. But that is one of the powers, of DAO, or the benefits of DAOs. So DAOs have recently experienced, I already spoke about all of that, so I'm not going to read that. Okay, so a couple other things I wanted to talk about, which is on the right side here. DAO is a general term covering a range of organizational structures and applications. They have identified 9 categories of DAOs based on their primary objective, which they divided it out, you'll see it soon, between generative, associative, or ad hoc. And primary means of achieving that objective activity. Value transfer is social. While traditional corporate governance relies on management and formal legal structures, like LLCs, all of those structures there, DAOs attempt to operate in a decentralized fashion, typically running on public, permissionless blockchains with rules, encoded like smart contracts, right? Open source software protocols and enforced by smart contracts. So that is what this is. And if you haven't noticed, we are moving into a world where they don't really want corporate America like that. A lot of CEOs have been quitting since 2020. A lot of these CEOs have been stepping down even just recently. They're all getting in trouble all of a sudden. They're really trying to push DAOs. You just see $16 billion worth of DAOs now. They want more participants. They want all of humanity, 8 billion people involved in the decision-making process. They don't want people at the top anymore. They want, we're all supposed to be moving to, like I told you all earlier, community, an organization. We're all moving to this one world type of way of life. We're all supposed to be united, one. There's no need for someone at the top of all these 50 million companies out here to tell us all what to do, right? So this is where we're headed. So pretty much like I stated earlier, like you've seen with the Fortune 500 companies, or maybe even some governments or religious institutions, they pretty much were the sole decision makers to govern the resources, territories, and communities, right? And they give you some examples on how they did that. But we're trying to get away from centralization, and they're telling you the cons about it. They said, yet centralization is not without its cost. With a small minority in charge, centralized entities tend to make decisions opaquely and consolidate power at the top. So another phrase you're going to keep hearing is that they want to level the playing field, even the playing field for this next iteration, right, of life. For this next stage that we're headed into, that's what they want to do. They said the overheads of centralized management can be considerable. Moreover, centralized governments may overemphasize narrow goals, like maximizing shareholder profits. And we see this time and time again. people are not getting laid off due to AI. Let's just stop, the lies, right? We haven't seen any AI come and replace any of these people. At the end of the day, the entire world is really strained right now with their economies. Everybody's doing terrible. So they're just going to get rid of people in the name of AI. But really, it's because they have to maximize shareholder profits. That's always been the end game, period. And so what's the best way to do it? At this time, the best way to do it is to lay off people because you're going to be saving money. Now, we will be seeing AI come in next year and the following years, subsequent years, no doubt. But a lot of these companies are not telling the truth. They're not doing as well as they're saying they are, right? And so they're lying in these, the numbers that they're putting out there. And they have to, they really answer to the shareholders.